The T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas was super bright with flashing lights and full of loud, happy shouting. People were waving signs, yelling excitedly, and holding up their phones to record every little thing. Tonight was not just any fight night. Tonight was special. Brock Lesnar, also called the Beast Incarnate, was going to fight. He had never lost a fight. He was big, strong, and scary. Just being in the same place as him made people feel excited. The cameras were following Brock while he was warming up in his locker room. He moved his big arms through the air, punching and sweating. His shoulders were shiny from sweat. In the corner of the room was his coach, Coach Mason Miller. Coach Mason was an old man who had trained many fighters. His hands were rough, and he always had a wrinkle on his forehead because he was thinking so hard. Coach Mason had helped many people become champions, but Brock was different. Brock was like a wild storm. He was super strong, but lately, he had been acting too proud and full of himself. Coach Mason noticed that Brock was showing off more. He smiled too much for the cameras. He talked a lot of trash before fights. Coach Mason wasn't worried about tonight's fight. He was worried about what might happen next. 5 minutes, champ, someone called through the door. Brock smiled wide. He bounced up and down on his feet, ready to go. He rubbed the scar on his cheek, a mark he got from fighting before. Out in the arena, the people were going wild. In the front row, there was a man sitting very quietly. Everyone was whispering and looking at him. It was Jason Statham. Jason Statham was not loud or fancy. He was dressed simply, and he didn't bring bodyguards or friends. He just sat still, very calm. While Brock was big and loud and part of today's fighting world, Jason was from a time long ago. He was a master of a special fighting style called Aikido. He had trained for many, many years. He didn't fight to show off. He fought to understand. The music blasted. Lights flashed everywhere. Brock walked into the arena like a rock star. The crowd screamed. He held up his hands, slapped hands with fans, and smiled for the cameras. Coach Mason followed behind him, shaking his head quietly. Inside the cage, Brock's fight didn't last long. He knocked down his opponent in less than 2 minutes. A big punch, a takedown, then more punches until the referee stopped the fight. It was over fast. The crowd was clapping, but also feeling strange. It was amazing, but also kind of scary. Then Brock did something surprising. He grabbed the microphone. He flexed his big muscles and laughed. Then he looked into the crowd. His eyes found someone in the front row. Wait, is that Jason Statham? Brock's loud voice filled the whole place. The legend himself, he shouted. I grew up watching your movies. All those Aikido moves, do you ever wonder if they'd work on someone like me? Everyone in the crowd gasped. Then they started cheering louder. They loved drama. Jason Statham didn't say anything. He just sat still, his face calm like water. Brock smiled big. Hey Jason, what do you say? 1 round, just for fun. Let's see if your movie moves. Coach Mason, the coach, felt nervous. He could tell this wasn't a good idea. All the cameras turned to Jason. Everyone was waiting. It got quiet. Then Jason slowly stood up. The crowd went wild. Brock's smile got a little smaller, but then he smiled again. Oh, he's standing up. The announcer shouted, Are we about to see history? Brock started pacing like a lion. The crowd chanted louder, Statham. 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 Jason walked slowly toward the cage. He didn't rush. He didn't act excited. He was calm. Some security guards tried to stop him, but the crowd was too loud. In the back, important people talked quickly. People from insurance, the UFC president, and others made a fast decision. They said yes to 1 round, 5 minutes. No winner or loser. Just for fun. Inside the cage, Coach Mason grabbed Brock's arm. Listen to me, he said. Don't think this is a joke. Jason is not here to play. Brock smiled. Relax, coach. It's just for fun. I'll go easy. Coach Mason frowned. No. You're not listening. Watch his eyes. Not his hands. Not his feet. Watch his eyes. Brock nodded, but he wasn't really paying attention. He was excited. The referee called them to the middle. 1 round, 5 minutes. Protect yourselves at all times. Brock reached out to touch gloves with a big grin. Jason touched gloves softly, then stepped back calm. The bell rang. Brock ran forward fast, throwing big punches. He was trying to end the fight quickly, but Jason moved just a little. He turned his hips. He moved his feet. Brock's punches missed. The crowd gasped. Brock attacked again. He jumped with a flying knee. He spun with a back fist. Jason stayed calm. He didn't even seem to move much. His hands gently pushed. His body turned. Brock's power hit nothing. Jason didn't fight with force. He was like water. He flowed. He moved. He let Brock's power pass. The crowd started to notice. This was different. This wasn't a show anymore. This was special. Brock's face looked confused. He got more wild. He tried harder. Coach Mason yelled from the side, "Slow down. Find your rhythm." But Brock couldn't stop. He was chasing Jason, but couldn't catch him. Jason's eyes stayed on Brock. Calm. Quiet. Watching everything. One little push made Brock stumble. One tiny turn made him fall off balance. But Jason never punched. He didn't try to hurt Brock. He was teaching him. The crowd got quiet. Something magical was happening. The seconds ticked down. Brock was sweating hard. His chest was moving up and down fast. He looked tired. Jason looked peaceful. His feet were still. His hands are soft. At the very end, Jason said something soft. "It's not about breaking others. It's about mastering yourself." Brock blinked. His shoulders dropped. The wild energy inside him hit a wall. The bell rang. Everyone stood up. They didn't cheer for a winner. They cheered for the moment. Something special had happened. Brock walked up to Jason. This time, he didn't smile. He didn't act cool. He just reached out his hand. Jason shook it and nodded. Then he left the cage, not saying a word. The cameras showed Brock standing in the cage alone. He held the microphone, but he didn't talk. Coach Mason came beside him, putting a hand on his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, Brock didn't feel like a big scary beast. He just felt like a person. And he knew something had changed. The crowd kept buzzing with excitement. Jason Statham walked calmly away, quiet and still like a wave. Back in the cage, Brock still stood there. His body was still hot from the fight. But the cheers he expected weren't there. Instead, the crowd was whispering, confused and amazed. Brock's fists were still tight. His chest moved fast. But something inside him felt weird. In the locker room, Brock was pacing. He was angry and confused. He didn't smile anymore. He threw his gloves at the wall. "I don't get it," he said. "He didn't even hit me." Coach Mason leaned on the wall with his arms crossed. He didn't need to. Brock looked angry. "Come on, coach. Don't start. It was just for show." Coach Mason shook his head. "No. That's what you think. But you couldn't touch him. He was teaching you. He didn't even try hard." Brock huffed and ran his hand through his sweaty hair. Whatever. The crowd loved it. But deep down, he didn't believe what he said. Outside the locker room, the internet exploded. People were posting videos of the fight everywhere. It was on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. Hashtags like hashtag Beast vs. Master, hashtag Statham Magic, and hashtag UFC Shock were trending. People weren't just watching the fight. They were talking about what it meant. One person wrote, "This wasn't a fight. It was a lesson." Another person said, "Brock is a monster, but Statham is a ghost." Brock's phone buzzed again and again. Messages from sponsors, news people, friends, fans, even people making jokes and memes. But Brock didn't touch the phone. He just sat on the bench. His elbows rested on his knees. And he stared at the floor. Coach Mason sat next to Brock very quietly. He didn't say anything at first. They had just left a big fight. Finally, after a long time, Coach Mason asked, "How are you feeling, Brock?" Brock didn't answer right away. He didn't really know what he was feeling. It wasn't like he lost. No one had punched him or hurt him. But something still felt bad, like something inside him was broken. It was a feeling worse than losing. Far away across the big arena, a man named Jason Statham walked out quietly through a special door for VIPs. He didn't wave. He didn't talk to the reporters. He didn't smile for pictures. He just nodded politely to the people working there and to the fans. Then he left. His night was over. But for Brock, the night wasn't over. It was just beginning. That night, high up in his hotel room above the bright Las Vegas lights, Brock stood by the window. He looked down at the streets filled with cars and flashing lights. Usually, after a fight, Brock felt strong and excited. He would celebrate with his team, watch videos of the match, and laugh at jokes online. But tonight was different. The room was quiet. No one was there. Brock kept thinking about one moment. He thought about when Jason Statham moved past him, so smooth and fast. Brock had tried to hit him, but missed. Then Jason gently touched Brock's chest, not to hurt him, but almost like he was telling him something. Control yourself. Brock shook his head, trying to forget. What just happened? He whispered to himself. The next morning, someone knocked softly on Brock's hotel door. It was Coach Mason, his coach. Brock opened the door. Coach Mason looked serious. There's a press conference in 1 hour, Coach Mason said quietly. Brock just made a sound like hum. Coach Mason looked at him. You know what they're going to ask, right? They'll ask what happened last night. Brock's jaw got tight. I'll just say it was for fun. Just a show for the fans. Coach Mason didn't raise his voice. Was it fun? Brock didn't answer. He looked away. Later, at the press conference, Brock sat in the middle. His big golden belt sat in front of him. There were reporters, bright lights, and cameras clicking. People asked him questions fast. Brock, did you think Jason Statham would be easy to fight? What did you learn from that match? Would you fight him again? Brock leaned close to the microphone. He smiled a little, but it didn't feel real. Look, I'm here to fight, not to dance. I respect the guy. Sure, he's a legend. But let's not act like he's better than me. I'm the champ for a reason. People laughed. Cameras flashed. But Coach Mason stood in the back, watching closely. He could see that Brock's shoulders were tight. He saw a little flicker of fear behind Brock's smile. When the press people left, Brock stayed sitting for a minute. He looked at his belt. It used to feel like a prize. Now it looked heavy. Too heavy. That night, back at the gym, Brock trained extra hard. He hit the heavy bag again and again. Wham! 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 The sound echoed like loud thunder. Coach Mason watched without saying anything. Then he walked up and put his hand on the swinging bag to stop it. Brock, hitting harder won't fix this. Brock looked angry. Fix what? Coach Mason looked him in the eyes. You're not fighting Jason. You're fighting what he showed you. And you can't punch that away. Brock stood still. He didn't say anything. The fight, the crowd, the flashing lights, all of it seemed far away now. Finally, he pulled off his gloves and sat on a bench, tired and sweaty. What do I do now? Brock asked softly. Coach Mason sat beside him. That's the first real question you've asked me in years, he said. Far away, Jason Statham was having his own quiet evening. No cameras. No people watching. Just breathing, moving slowly, and practicing his skills like he had done for many years. He didn't need to show off. He didn't need fans. And in a quiet moment, he felt something deep inside. He knew without being told that somewhere in the city, someone had finally started asking the right questions. The next day, the sun shone down on Las Vegas. Brock sat outside on his hotel balcony. He looked out over the city. His championship belt was still inside the room. He hadn't touched it since the fight. He hadn't posted anything on the internet. He hadn't answered the messages. He hadn't even replied to the UFC boss. Coach Mason had stopped by a few times, but mostly left him alone. Brock's mind felt like a storm. He didn't know what to do. He kept seeing the fight in his head. Jason's calm face. His slow steps. The way he moved without trying hard. Brock had used all his power. He had used all his best moves. But he hadn't landed a single hit. Then that last moment. Not a punch. Not a kick. Just a soft touch on Brock's chest. Control yourself. Brock clenched his jaw. No one had ever made him feel so weak without hurting him. On the third day, the noise outside was still going. Sports shows were talking about it. Podcasts were making guesses. Fans were making funny pictures and videos. Some people laughed. Some were amazed. But inside Brock, something big had changed. He wasn't mad at Jason. He was mad at himself. Mad for not understanding. Mad because he cared so much about being famous, he forgot what real skill looked like. That evening, Coach Mason came again. "Are you going to sit here all week?" Coach Mason asked. "Or are you coming back to the gym?" Brock gave a tiny smile. "The gym's not the problem, Coach." Coach Mason raised his eyebrows. "Then what is?" Brock took a deep breath. "I've been punching things my whole life. Breaking people. Winning fights. But when's the last time I broke myself down? When did I last ask myself why I even fight?" Coach Mason nodded slowly. "That's the first thing you've said that shows you're ready." That night, Brock looked at his phone. He opened old messages. Then he started typing. "Mr. Statham, it's Brock Lesnar. I need to talk. Not for the cameras. Not for the news. Just talk." He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he pressed send. The next morning, he got a reply. It was short. "Meet me at the old dojo. Noon. Come alone." When Brock got there, the place was very different from the big gyms he knew. It was quiet and small. The floor was shiny wood. The walls had paper screens and a few old scrolls with writing. There were no signs, no trophies, no pictures. Just silence. Jason was already inside. He stood on the mat, barefoot, wearing a plain white GI. He didn't smile. He didn't hug or shake hands. He just nodded. "Why are you here?" he asked in a calm, quiet voice. Brock wanted to say something cool. Something like in a movie. But he couldn't. Something about Jason made him feel like telling the truth. "I don't know anymore," Brock said. "That night, you showed me something, and I don't get it." Jason looked at him. "You wanted to break me," he said. Brock sighed. "Yeah." Jason stepped closer. "You wanted to break a mirror." Brock frowned. He didn't understand. Jason kept talking, soft but clear. "You weren't fighting me. You were fighting what you saw in me. You were fighting yourself. And you weren't ready." Those words hit Brock harder than any punch. And that's where Brock's real journey began. Not to break others, but to understand himself. Not to win the crowd, but to master control. Not to be just a fighter, but to become something more. And as the sun set over Las Vegas again, in a small quiet dojo, a new kind of battle had begun. One that had nothing to do with belts, fame, or power. And everything to do with heart. Brock's shoulders dropped a little. "Can you teach me?" he asked in a quiet voice. Jason Statham gave a small nod. "Take off your shoes." For the next 2 hours, they trained. It wasn't a big loud class with hard punches or kicks. It wasn't about fighting strong or being fast. It was slow and quiet. Brock learned how to move his feet, how to stay balanced, and how to turn someone's strength against them without being mean. Jason helped Brock move slowly, showing him where to place his hands, where to step. He didn't talk much. He just showed the moves and gently fixed Brock's posture. Brock wasn't sweating because it was hard. He was sweating because he was really paying attention. Brock, who was always the strongest in the room, suddenly felt like a beginner. But instead of feeling bad, it felt nice. Like a new start. At the end, Jason stood across from Brock. He said softly, "Strength with no control is just loud noise. Strength with control is like music." Brock stayed quiet, thinking. Then, for the first time ever, he bowed, standing still with his hands by his side. Jason gave a tiny smile and bowed back. That night, in his hotel room, Brock sat with his coach, Coach Mason. Coach Mason looked at him and said, "You look different." Brock gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, he said. It feels different. He picked up his phone. He looked at his social media app, the one he used all the time. His finger hovered over it for a long time. But then, he turned off the phone and put it down. He turned to Coach Mason. Tomorrow we train. Coach Mason smiled back. Tomorrow, he agreed. And in that quiet room, with no cameras and no people watching, Brock Lesnar, the big strong fighter everyone called the Beast, began the hardest fight of all, the fight inside himself. For weeks, Brock disappeared. No one saw him in the news. No selfies from the gym. No funny videos or loud messages to other fighters. Fans were asking, where did the Beast go? But Brock was right where no one expected. In a quiet little building at the edge of town. It was a dojo, a place to learn martial arts. Each morning, Brock left behind his noisy world. No reporters, no fans, no loud music. Just him and the wooden floor of the dojo. There were no weights to lift, no big mirrors to look at himself. Just space to move and breathe. Jason never gave big speeches. He didn't care that Brock was a famous champion. To him, Brock was just a student. A learner. Someone who still needed to grow. Every time Brock tried to use too much power, Jason stopped him. He'd touch his wrist lightly. He'd shake his head. No force, he'd say. Feel. At first, Brock found it very hard. His body was made for smashing. His mind was used to winning with strength. But slowly, day by day, something started to change. Brock's breathing slowed. His movements became smoother. He was still strong, but he wasn't wasting energy anymore. He had control. Outside, people kept asking where Brock was. The UFC called Coach Mason again and again. Where's Brock? What's he doing? Coach Mason just said he's working. One day, Coach Mason came to the dojo. He stood at the door and watched. Brock was moving through soft, slow drills with Jason. Coach Mason could see something was different. Brock was big, yes. But now there was a kind of calm in how he moved. A kind of peace. After training, Brock walked over, sweating and breathing hard. But his eyes were calm. Coach Mason said with a little grin, "You're not the same guy." Brock smiled gently. "I know." Later that night, Brock and Jason sat on the mat. The sunset outside painted the room with orange light. They sat quietly. Then Brock spoke, softly. "You know what I realized? All this time, I thought fighting meant showing I'm better. Stronger. Tougher." He looked at his hands. "But that's not what it is. It's about who you are when no one's watching." Jason gave a slow nod. No smile. No big reaction. Just understanding. Brock felt something deep inside him shift, like a heavy knot inside his chest coming undone. The next day, Coach Mason came with news. "We've got a fight date," he said, handing Brock a paper. 8 weeks. Brock looked at the paper and nodded. He didn't get nervous. He didn't start yelling or posting messages. He just breathed out. "Okay," he said. He looked at Jason. Jason was already watching. They didn't need to speak. They both knew the training wasn't done. The next 8 weeks were not like other training camps. No TV interviews. No shouting at his opponent. No funny videos online. Just hard, quiet training. Brock trained every day. He still worked hard. After all, he was still the Beast. But now, there was something new inside him. A stillness. A calm. Reporters asked, "Why isn't Brock saying anything?" Brock just smiled softly and said, "I'm not here to talk. I'm here to work." The night before the fight, Brock stood on his hotel balcony. The city lights blinked below him. His phone buzzed over and over, messages from reporters, companies, fans. Brock turned the phone face down. He didn't touch it. For the first time, Brock wasn't going into the fight to smash or scare. He was going in to see something, to see if the lessons he had learned were now part of him. He closed his eyes and took a deep, calm breath. He wasn't just a beast anymore. He was a man ready to stand strong in the middle of the storm, and not run. Then came fight night. The big arena was full. Lights flashed, people cheered, cameras rolled. Backstage, Brock sat quietly. His big hands rested on his knees. No loud music. No wild laughter. No cameras in his face. Just breathing. Coach Mason sat nearby, watching Brock with quiet respect. He had never seen Brock like this before. The old Brock would have been pacing like a wild animal. But Brock was still. Calm. His eyes half closed. Breathing. And in the hallway, leaning against the wall, was Jason Statham. He didn't bring anyone. He didn't say anything. He was just there. Watching. Brock stood up and rolled his shoulders. He looked at Jason. Jason gave a little nod. Brock nodded back. That was all they needed. The announcer's voice shouted loud. The heavyweight champion of the world, the beast incarnate, Brock Lesnar. But Brock didn't jump or roar. He didn't pound his chest. He just walked slowly to the cage. Calm. Ready. The fighter he was going to face was strong and dangerous. He had knocked out every other person he fought. People thought this would be a monster fight. But Brock wasn't there to fight with anger. He was there to test himself. The bell rang. The first round started fast. The challenger came in with big punches, trying to beat Brock early. But Brock didn't fall for it. He didn't fight wild. He moved carefully. He used what Jason taught him. In the second round, Brock started to take control. He didn't fight crazy. He flowed. He took the other fighter down gently, but with power. He hit smart. Not to hurt. To control. And when the time came, he saw the chance. He used a perfect move, a chokehold. He didn't squeeze too hard. He held just enough. When the other fighter tapped, Brock let go right away. No screaming. No dancing. Just a quiet pat on the back and a nod of respect. The referee held up his hand. The belt went around his waist. The crowd went wild. But Brock didn't climb the cage or shout. He just stood there, calm, and took in the moment. The interviewer came. Brock, you did it. You're still the champ. What do you want to say? Brock looked at the sea of people. Then his eyes found Jason in the shadows. Jason gave a small, quiet smile. Brock spoke. First, respect to my opponent. A true warrior. The crowd cheered. I'm lucky, Brock said. Lucky to be here. Lucky to wear this belt. But luck didn't win tonight. He looked down, then up again. These past months, I learned something. The fight isn't really about the other guy. It's about you. Your mind. Your ego. Your control. You have to master that every day. He smiled softly. I'm still learning. And I'm thankful. The interviewer asked, what's next for the beast? Brock didn't yell. He didn't shout names. He just handed back the mic, nodded, and walked away. Backstage, Jason was waiting. Brock walked over. Jason placed a hand on Brock's shoulder. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Brock smiled, tired but happy. Wouldn't miss it. That night, the lights of the arena turned off. The crowd left. The cameras stopped. Brock sat alone in his room. His belt was on the table. His phone buzzed and blinked beside it. Messages from all over. But Brock didn't touch it. He closed his eyes. He took a long breath. The beast was still there, inside him. It always would be. But now, Brock Lesnar understood something very important. The biggest, hardest fight he ever had wasn't against someone else. It was inside him. And that was the fight he would keep working on, every day, every breath, for the rest of his life. Did you enjoy the story? I'd love to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you had fun, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the next adventure. Thanks for being here, and as always, stay curious, stay bold, and keep exploring.